Hey, Susan.
Hey, Toddy. How was your new year?
Good. How is yours? Are you in the meeting room or some? Actually, you're on the desk.
Hi. Hello, Jimmy. Welcome back.
Hello.
Hey, Jimmy.
Yeah, it's been 3 weeks since I've been connected to anything work related.
Wow. Did you have a good break?
A short break. Yeah, 3 weeks is not as long as I thought it would be, but it was good. Yeah, thanks.
I got back yesterday. Well, I'd only had like a long weekend. And yeah, it was even with a 5-day disconnect. It's like, oh, what was I doing again? It took a while to get back.
Yeah, I thought I'd taken enough notes, but as it turns out, I guess not. So I'm trying to regain my thought process there. So
Okay, we have a few folks on the call now. I guess we can get started. Let me share my screen. Trying to find the participant list. Just a second. Okay. Move that around. Okay. I feel like now I have a good view of everything. Can everybody see the screen okay?
I can, yep.
Thanks for confirming. Okay, as usual, we'll start with our PRs. Jimmy, I believe you were working on the custom endpoint resolver. I've approved the PR. I believe it just needs like a rebase with the main branch to resolve any merge conflict. Would you be able to take a look there? And I think it'll be good to merge.
yeah, sure. Yeah, I haven't done rebase in a while, but yeah, I'll look at it.
Great. And Noel have opened a PR to provide a mechanism to download the plugin as an OCI artifact. So Jimmy, please have a look at this PR and see if this is aligned with the scenario you need, and feel free to provide any feedback. But I think this is really exciting.
So I haven't looked at this yet, but is this primarily mutating the container after it comes up to pull in OCI artifacts that contain plugin binaries?
Yes,
Okay.
I believe so. So quickly bringing up the PR here, I believe actually in the description of the PR, no, have like a nice walkthrough like of an example. So he's pushing the built binary to a sample registry, and it included configurations on how to download the source of the plugin. So this points to a image. And he included sample logs, like how you would see this get downloaded. And right here it says downloading plugin sample to the plugin directory. And then this way Ratify would be able to discover it at runtime.
So does this also include, so my assumption is based on what I'm seeing here is that it's going to download what we configure at the time Ratify boots?
Yes, based on the configuration or the CRD.
Okay. Because that's that's one of the questions I was going to ask today about how we're going to, and I asked it last meeting that I attended back in beginning in December, which was how are we going to synchronize when binaries are available that need to be added, and how we're going to synchronize that with the release of Ratify. So my assumption here is that as long as we're not implementing anything that would be a backwards breaking change in a binary, we could just change the Ratify configuration and restart it, and it would pull down the right version of the binary that we needed.
Yeah, so I think the timing of the download happens when we initialize all the like verifiers in store. So
Yeah.
that'll be like, it happens when Ratify boots, and then the CRD should also be detecting changes. So for example, if your verifier didn't have a source before, and then you're updating the CRD to point it to a registry to pull down the artifact, it would actually reload the executor. So like no restart of Ratify should be required.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, that's very interesting. I mean, normally I would, if I was to throw on my compliance hat, I'd say, hey, we're violating immutability of the
I see.
container. But I really like the idea of loosening the coupling between Ratify, container image creation, and binary releases.
Yeah, the compliance bit is a good point. We'll take a note of that. It's not on the call today, but yeah, I'll definitely make a note of that. But give this a try and see if this is helpful.
I don't know if I'll
do
be able
you
to give
have
it a try immediately. I mean, I'm still coming back up to speed, but I've never done plugin work yet, so I've not even got, not even implemented our binary in here yet. So this is all brand new. So I'll try. I'll see what I can do. Yeah.
Yeah, the timing is great then. Like once you've built the binary and this goes in, you'll be the first
Yeah. Okay. All right.
yeah, customer to try this.
Yeah, it does look promising.
Yeah, hope it's useful to you. Okay. The next PR on the list, Joshua, I saw your comment about opening another PR that would place the configuration of the nested artifact to the closer to the verifier. Would that be?
Yeah.
I haven't had a chance to read your comments yet.
Yeah, so the other PR that I was going to submit is basically it still moves the logic to the executor, so out of the plugin, but it keeps the configuration with the verifiers. So that would enable us to not have to redeploy Ratify because we're not using executor config. And then there is an issue that Kara had created, issue 528, that is about decoupling nested references from verifiers. So I think the path forward is probably, I will submit this new PR, so the logic is moved over, and then we can follow up with a further PR where we actually decouple nested references from the verifier. And that would involve likely like using a CRD or something like that. So
Okay, got
yeah,
it.
that
So
was.
are we still moving forward with 518, or will you be opening?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think we can probably close this. I think the consensus was we'll just move the logic over to the executor. So yeah, I think this is fine to close.
Okay, cool. So I will read your comments and then respond to them if needed, and then I can close it once we're ready.
Okay, yeah, sounds good.
Great. Thanks for that, Joshua. Next one. I believe Noel left some comments on the plugin as OCI artifacts. I still need to review and respond to them. I've approved the move auth provider to the commons package. So just waiting for a rebase on that. And Binbin and Akash is published draft PRs for the feature that they're working on. And
So
Yep.
back to
Go ahead,
that
Jimmy.
again. You're moving the auth provider, the entire auth provider tree over to the commons package
yeah, so
out of the refer store.
out of the out of the refer store, the rationale for this is the identity that we use for pulling a signature can also be used for pulling the OCR artifact for the plugin. So we want to share that code. So we're pulling it out to common.
Okay.
Do you have any concerns, Jimmy?
No. I mean, I guess no. I don't think so off the top of my head. I mean, I didn't even consider that use case. I just assumed that the binaries would come from a public registry.
Registry.
But at a minimum, at least I can now go back and talk with the folks about how we want to serve or vend the binary. So yeah, cool.
Yeah, so this would moving the auth provider to common just means when we download a plugin, we get the auth for free because we already implemented the auth on the RS store before.
Yeah.
And potentially, if there's a need, we can also support different identities. So, but I think the assumption right now is a single identity would be used for pulling the plugin and pulling the signatures. Is that a okay assumption?
So, I mean, well, along those same lines, I guess there was always this thing in the back of my mind that I had like in my tickle file that I just hadn't surfaced yet. And that was, and maybe I misunderstand how this whole thing works, but if we need to pull from different registries, wouldn't we already need to have different identities? I mean, or is the assumption that, was the assumption that you would always go with like one single registry when you're pulling images? And I think I didn't understand that piece.
Got it. So I think the scenario we have in mind is we'll use different registries. Like a registry would be like registry A for downloading the plugin artifact. And for the images, they would probably live in a different, like registry B, where you pull the image and the signatures. But the same identity would be granted the roles or the
For both of them.
permissions for to access both of these registries.
So I think I asked this question like, I want to say months ago, and I never followed up on it, and I apologize, but it was the scenario or use case ever discussed where we're validating signatures against two different registries that require different identity. Was that ever a potential use case? And if it's not, that's fine. I just want to make sure I understand the boundaries of this of identity here, because it sounds like for instance, for example, I would be, let's say I'm running Ratify inside AWS cloud. I would authenticate probably to AWS ECR and then start pulling images. Someone else would be running it inside Azure and they would authenticate to AKS or your registry and then pull. So it doesn't look like we have a use case or functionality that would allow you to authenticate to multiple different registries. Is that the case?
So for a single image, would all the signature live in the same?
They would. I guess
Right.
my thought is,
but you can validate different images from like one from ACR or another one from ECR.
So that exists already. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think about a configuration file. Like you can configure different auth providers. So you can enable.
You can enable multiple ones. I just want to make sure the use case was there. I mean, maybe it is, and I've never tried it. So.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something that we never tested, but I think technically the capability is there. Like I have to confirm with Akash later, but we could potentially just loop all our loop through all our auth provider and figure out which one have access and fetch the artifacts if needed. Right?
And that's the thing. I don't know off the top of my head what we're using. Either we're using a trial and error thing, or we actually have a way of keying auth providers to specific registries, I guess.
Yeah, that mapping we don't have.
Yeah.
Like if we have this capability, it'll be a loop, but I can take a note and to check with Akash and follow, and we can just start a thread on the Ratify Slack channel to kind of loop back.
Sure. Cool. Thank you.
And just to check in with Toddy, just on the customer scenario side, Toddy, that is a scenario that will enable, right? Like people can pull images from different cloud providers, and Ratify should have the capability to support the scenario.
Yeah, so we are thinking that this should be possible. Mhm.
Okay, cool. Thanks for confirming. Yep, back to the auth provider refactoring. So I think that PR is good to go, just pending a rebase. And yeah, thanks for opening the PR, Matt, for the JSON schema validator. I haven't had a chance to look through it yet, but between me and Binbin this week, we can review this. And just to confirm my understanding, I was reading through the PR in the mostly on the like README files. So this custom plugin, sorry, this plugin is not a built-in plugin. It's is this a like how cosign plugin?
So I did it similar to like the license checker. So it is sort of built into the image, similar to those. Yeah, and the concept is, so it kind of originated from, to meet a need we have, we need to be able to verify, for example, like a vulnerability report, which, you know, could come in any format. We'll just say like tree, for example. And at the end of the day, like for our needs, it turns out it's kind of just a schema validator for the most part. Like, you know, other than the genericity of it would just be that, right? If you can specify a schema and that schema verifies, it was kind of good enough for at least a pass of being able to verify those. So rather than sort of build it geared towards any given, like, you know, Trivy file or whatever it might be, any given schema type, it was easy enough just to sort of make it, you just pass it a schema, or, you know, access to a schema, or if you happen to like volume mount, you could do it with the file as you see there in that example. It just needs to be a schema.
I see.
Yeah, and so it can just pick it up and it just literally just verifies that schema against, you know, what it should be. So you can attach an artifact type, as you're seeing here, like a you know, a Trivy serif to, in that case, the, you know, in this case, I'm just hitting a schema store org where schema lives. And if those are valid, then it would return true, that it's valid. If not, it returns all the fields kind of that mismatched, if that makes sense. So like in the case of the test, in the test, I just gave it a completely wrong JSON. I just picked a random one that I knew would be really bad. So you could see sort of a list of all the fields that were bad in that particular instance.
Great. And this validates the schema, but doesn't validate like the value of the properties. So is there a plan to like have additional, like, do you have a requirement to also validate the values?
So kind of going through this with similar with SBOM. So for the SBOM one as well, that's not in the PR here, but work we're doing on there, pulling in, you know, third-party libraries to kind of handle similar to this, like SBOM validation. That's kind of the path that those go as well. As they validate the schema, and then they validate on the SBOM side, at least, that if you do have fields, like expected ones, that the type is at least what it expects. So if it's expecting a collection and you know, yours is a string, that's going to say, well, you can't do that. But the actual value of the setting, it's not verifying, like, you know, poking into the values and pulling them out and saying, is this whatever I would expect it to be, the actual value. So as far as like going forward, making maybe, are you thinking more of a targeted plugin that may scan for very specific things within, like, for example, just say Trivy because we're looking at it here, but like a Serif report. I think for our initial need, we just needed to be able to verify that they are attached, right? You do have a scan, like a vulnerability scan report, and that it at least matches the format. So we know it should, that it was produced valid, if that makes sense. Like the tool that created that at least followed the schema format that we would expect.
Okay, and this, like, just making sure that the format looks good is sufficient, or is it like a step one?
That's what this is doing. Step one. Yep. So
Okay.
this could be used for obviously any schemas. If there was any need for validation of any files you'd expect to be there, we could validate schemas on any of those, at least to kind of, if there were some attached files that were just completely wrong, that could be a verify that we could do and just say, hey, wait a minute, I'm expecting this particular artifact type to at least be to match the schema, and it doesn't. So let's go ahead and like not pass that. That was the thought behind this, at least.
Got it. Thanks for the details here.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions on this PR? Okay. We'll be able to review it this week, Matt.
Okay, yeah, if there's any feedback, if we feel it should be maybe more targeted to specific, like a Trivy or whatever it actually is targeting, just let me know, obviously, whatever the kind of the community needs their conversation goes towards, that feedback would be great.
Yeah, I wonder, Toddy, do we have a scenario that we could benefit from the schema validator?
I actually haven't thought about the schema validator specifically. The reason being is we are still trying to figure out what will be the way these vulnerability reports will be stored. Because different scanners, they have different schema that they use, right? And I don't know how like whether we want to go into the details to develop like parsers for each or validators for each individual schema, or whether we can actually just use something standard. That's kind of open question right now, but I don't have any particular opinion which way we will go.
Okay.
Okay, that lines up exactly with sort of where my mindset was of not knowing kind of how they'll be generated or the exact format. Sort of a step one of getting something out that can just validate a schema we pointed to. So yeah, I think with what you just said lines up with sort of where I was, in creation of this.
Yes. So what you're saying is that actually we will point it to a schema. How do we configure the schema that we need to validate against?
Yeah, so if there is an existing one, for example, like the Serif plus JSON Trivy one, I would add like, JSON.schemasstore.org. So you could point it to an existing one. It could be anywhere, obviously. You could also, if you have one, let's say a custom one or whatever it might be, you could also use the file : / you see there. If you'll have like a volume mount or something, which can pick it up there. So it literally just needs to be a JSON schema file that it can get to. So you could use, no unpublished ones, or if you did happen to have a custom one or whatever, you could put it on, just somewhere, anywhere that it could get to our file system.
And so for the file option, so two concerns that I have with that, and actually this is just what I have on top of my mind is, one is the performance part. So when we actually have, let's say, a schema which is accessible over the network, which is the Serif one that you have as an example, right? So what will be the performance impact on that? On the second one, which is the local file, well, we need to have like some volume that is mapped to, let's say, the Ratify pods in order to store these schemas, right? And we need to populate them every time when Ratify starts. So we haven't, I personally haven't thought about those, but any ideas that you have how we can solve these things? That I
Yeah.
think it's worth exploring. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for the file side of it, it would probably be very similar to sort of the initial work done around how you could load plugins via a very similar scenario. And I think that's one of the, or actually, Susan, that's the repo that we sort of handed over and is now in Ratify, where it has all the breakdowns, I think, of ways to load plugins. One of them was a volume mount. So it could be done similar to that. For the reaching out to like a URI to get it, yeah, that's a good point. Like we could probably look into, I haven't looked into any built-in sort of caching stuff within Ratify. I haven't sort of gone in that area yet, but maybe potentially we could, you know, if it becomes to be a problem, we could cache things and look them up from there.
Yeah, because we had similar discussions for, let's say, how we can cache stuff, and I don't. And Susan, correct me if I'm wrong. I may have missed some of the meetings, but we don't have a good story for caching right now on things. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. I understand, and as I mentioned, like we've been exploring these options for if we have vulnerability report, we would like to even go further to say, okay, not only we want to validate the report, but also make sure that, for example, there is no certain vulnerability present in the report, like let's say CV something.
Right. Yeah. We had talked sort of about, I think we actually have on our board some open, you know, sort of wish list items as well that just give hint to things like that, of how stuff like that might be handled, whether it's generating, you know, a scorecard, like a security scorecard, or in general, just being able to pick out certain vulnerabilities that you may know of. So we do have things number not to be worked on, obviously in our current pipeline, but just kind of our thoughts. And so it's very similar to what you're saying.
Okay. Else, yeah. So I think it's a good step forward. Just there are open questions that we need to continue discussing.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
Matt, just a quick question. When you pull down the artifact, does it like have a like the format of the artifact, and then it'll just use this mapping to find a schema that it should check against?
Sorry, I was muted. Yep. So that example is obviously shown two different ways. So really, you just have, in the case of like this serif plus JSON URL one. So yeah, so that mapping, what it does is when it has the artifact type that matches, then when it looks at the actual, you know, when it's going through the artifacts, the media type, if it matches the application serif JSON, that's when that mapping comes into play, and then it'll bounce it off the other. It's just the key value pair. It basically looks up the key. If it finds it, then it goes out and gets the schema and uses that.
Okay, based off the media type. Got it.
Yep.
Thanks. Yeah, I believe that's everything on our PR list. Anyone have any other items to discuss?
So I had just one little quick question with regards to rebasing. When I'm looking at my PR, there looks like there's an option to just update with rebase right there in the GitHub interface. Is that all I have to do? Is that, or do I have to?
Oh, yeah. Just on the top of my head, I think there was a problem with the signing process. So let me find my comment. Oh, yes. So it was previously blocked on all like the base branch requires all commit to be signed. So
I did sign it. I don't know why it didn't take, but okay.
Yeah, so I believe like with the update branch, you can just do it from the UI, but then you'll see the all commit to be signed error.
Okay.
Once the update branch. So maybe like I think the easiest is to just like merge everything into a single commit and sign that one commit together.
Yeah, I might have to reach out to you or Akash to make sure I understand how you want me to do this.
Sure. Akash is oof this week, so he'll be back next week. So feel free to ping me on Slack.
Okay, thanks.
Cool. Any other items to discuss, anyone?
I just pasted a link for one issue in the chat. If we have time, we can discuss that. So Noel is not on the call, but the issue is that we have an accidental tag created at some point in time. Should we delete that tag, or what do we want to do about it? Because it says that 1.1 is available.
Got it. I was trying to think, like, what did we do to handle this issue? Like, we had an issue where the Helm chart was picking up v1.1, right? So we did delete something.
Right.
Do you remember what we deleted?
No, I was not the one because it is help chart update, right? But the release is
Yeah.
still there and the tag is still there. So what I'm hoping is that given that it's an alpha tag and it's a very old tag for more than 6 months, we should be able to drop it, but I'll
Yeah.
give it a week. If there's no concerns, then next week before the meeting, I'll probably remove that tag.
Yeah, sounds good. I don't have any concerns, but like all I remember from our previous discussions, like, oh, deleting a tag is frowned upon, but like we didn't have any concrete reasons on why do we want to keep it. Like no one is using
because if
it.
somebody is referencing that tag
Yeah.
in any form, it's a problem. But given that it's an old tag, I'm not sure whether we should worry about it anymore and then just even remove it as needed.
Yeah, where I don't have any, like, I don't know anyone that's depending on this tag, so they will reach out if it breaks.
Okay, let's keep this issue open for maybe another week and then give some time, and if nobody's responding, then we take it.
Okay, I can leave a comment. Keep this tag, sorry, this issue for 1 more week if no other concerns. We'll proceed with removing this tag. Okay, so the time clock is ticking now. Thanks. Okay, so if no other topics, we can finish the meeting early and get 20 minutes back.
All right, sorry, last one before we drop. GK Gatekeeper version 3.1.1 is released. So I've opened an issue for that.
Okay.
If you and Louis can triage it at some point and see when we want to absorb it, because they have moved external data provider to beta.
From alpha?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Any changes between the two?
No, the release notes has a bunch of changes, but I think it's that's why we just need to triage it out first.
Got it. Okay. Yeah,
Right.
it sounds good.
Okay. So I mean, obviously moving into beta, that would mean that we'd have to change our data provider configurations, right? To reflect the beta version of the API. So
I think so. That's why I just opened the issue so that we can start the discussion as to whether we need to absorb it before end of January or what needs to happen.
Yeah, and I wanted to bring something up real quick.
Sure.
With regards to, it just triggered a question I had. I'm currently working with the Gatekeeper team trying to figure out how the best way to troubleshoot external data calls, because they're not necessarily surfaced upwards in variables inside the actual Rego for the constraint templates that we use. So if we ever wanted to troubleshoot on the Gatekeeper side, you know, we can look obviously in Ratify and see, I would assume we can see that, you know, calls are being made from Gatekeeper to, you know, to Ratify. But if we wanted to troubleshoot on the Gatekeeper side, it's really difficult to do that without like turning on tracing, which is easy to do with a config object that's brand new. It's in alpha right now I think it's still in alpha for 3.1.1. But my concern is I was trying to figure out what Gatekeeper is getting back. And it's all encapsulated. I mean, it's hidden so far that I can tell. And so I'm trying to figure out how to, from the Gatekeeper side, at least look in the logs and see, here's what Ratify returned, or here's whatever the external data provider resource returned back. And it's, so far I haven't been able to accomplish that yet. So to me, that's kind of like a black hole or a hidden, it's hard to troubleshoot, I guess is what I'm getting at. So I'd like to at some point be able to, if I figure out with the Gatekeeper folks how to expose through tracing those variables, such that we can see what is coming back from Ratify and we can see it in our Gatekeeper output, it would make it easier to troubleshoot this entire thing. But just want to throw that out there.
I think we can reach out to Sartakan folks on our side as well, because they've been looking at Ratify as well in scenarios that integrate with this. So to summarize, if we can get diagnostics information from Gatekeeper for external data.
Yeah, because you can with the new config object that you can create in Gatekeeper, you can tell it to trace on a specific user or tell it to trace on specific GVKs. But what you get back from the call to the external data provider is just a bunch of literally something that says local 1, local 2, and it doesn't have any intelligence to it to show you what you're actually getting. It just says, it's just showing you a bunch of placeholder variable names, and it doesn't really give you information.
I see.
So at least when you turn on tracing, at least inside the, with debug, even inside the Gatekeeper logs, you can't see it.
Okay.
So,
do you have an issue already?
I have not opened an issue for this because it's not a Ratify specific thing. I could,
No, on the Gatekeeper side.
I have not opened an issue with them yet on this. I was working with Rita kind of in Slack to figure out. So I got some more testing to do. She gave me an idea and I'm going to try it out. But yeah.
All right, sounds good.
Jimmy, you do see the payload from the Ratify logs, right?
So if for some reason your variables don't align, like you don't have your policy correct, and you want to troubleshoot what you're physically getting back to see why you're not getting, either the deny or validate that you want, that's the part that's breaking down for me right now. I mean, as if everything works right, then you don't have to troubleshoot that. But if you wanted to see what comes back, that's a little difficult. I mean, if it doesn't match your variable. So for instance, inside Rego, if I'm saying, hey, response.items, and then give me the keys from the items that are sent back from the Ratify layer, if I don't set my Rego correctly, then it's hard for me to troubleshoot what is physically coming back, regardless of what I'm looking for, is what I'm trying to get to.
Yeah. So I wonder if you can stitch up the log, like Ratify would, from memory, I think I've seen logs where Ratify says, okay, this is the success result with the verifier report.
Yeah,
so,
on the Ratify
Yep.
side, absolutely. You could, I mean, I do that now with my prototype. I can, it's not Ratify, but it's something else. But I mean, I can do that now. You just say, hey, I marshal the object I'm getting ready to send, and then I just throw it into the log. So at least on the data provider side, I can see that I tried to send this. So I'm just trying to figure out a way to, on the Gatekeeper side, log it. I mean, it's probably not a Ratify issue at this point. I just wanted to throw it out there.
Got it.
But I mean, if I'm successful, then we should probably add it as a troubleshooting tip in our documentation somewhere.
Cool. Yeah. Sounds good. So we'll also bring it up at our next sync up with the gatekeeper folks. We'll
yeah,
let you
hopefully
know what we
we'll have
hear.
it ironed out by then. But yeah.
Cool. Anything else? Okay. Thanks for joining the call, everyone. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Thanks, Susan.
Take care.
Thank you. Happy New Year.